Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra episode review. This is going to be the review for K210, A New Spiritual Age, which obviously aired yesterday, Friday. And with that, it means we only have 13 days left until the season finale of Korra, basically. I say season and not book because basically with the end of book 2, that is the end of the first season of Korra, even though it is the book 2 finale. So that's interesting by itself. But this episode, general thoughts, I really did enjoy it. It was not what I expected in that it was really fast paced. I didn't expect it to cover this much ground. I expected this to kind of not have as much drama as an intensity as it did have, and I really expected this and maybe episode 11 to maybe cover the same amount of ground that this episode did. So it was a kind of pleasant surprise to see how much they actually covered in this episode. And that by the end of this episode, Spirit Portal opened, so both of them are opened now. Jinora is held hostage in the spirit world, and Korra is in a even worse position now than she was before. So it did some really big stuff, and I'm kind of happy with that. Plot going forward really quickly, and it means that this episode has left the series to have its last 4 episodes really well, because obviously next week we're getting 11 and 12, the week after that 13 and 14. Just 2 weeks left and 4 episodes in those 2 weeks, so it's gonna make those last 4 episodes really special just because of where this episode has left the series off. We're approaching the end game now. Things are getting real. Really, really well done overall. So getting to more specifics, that split up at the start of this episode really did take me by surprise. Because I think in all my speculation about this episode, I expected number one on that list, Korra and Jinora development in terms of their relationship and her being the guide to Korra. So for them to split up within about 3 minutes of the episode was a big shock to me, and in some ways it's kind of like I wish they had got a little more time together. But I think them being separated and Korra obviously being the elder of the two really showed the kind of connection that the two have, just in how much Korra wanted to reunite with Jinora once again, and especially with the end of the episode, how I suppose responsible his Korra must feel for what's happened to Jinora, and even though like it wasn't completely her fault, they knew it was a risk sending them both into the spirit world, and it just puts Korra in this even worse position now. With Tenzin, I assume, is probably going to be a little bit mad at Korra, even though I maybe expect something a bit less predictable to happen. But anyway, they get split up obviously because of this issue that happens with the kind of prairie dog slash meerkats, I think they're called, and they obviously get sucked into the water, eaten by a spirit, and end up getting kind of separated. And with Jinora's side of the story, we basically get her going to see Wan Shi Tong, who I think needs more time this season, needs more development to really become a character. Now, the reason I say that is because his role in this episode almost wasn't needed unless they're using him as a kind of slightly bigger role in this season. Because the only thing he did in this episode was basically distract Jinora with his library to give everyone to give Unalaq enough time to get there and capture her. When they probably could have done it in a way where she basically got split up from Korra and ended up directly in front of Unalaq. So them using Wan Shi Tong, I think at least I expect more from Mike and Brian, that they're not going to just have Wan Shi Tong be that reference that we all like, and I really think they're going to give him character development, because his big thing, even going from Avatar: The Last Airbender, was that he doesn't like humans, and we really saw that when he didn't speak in any kind of positive terms about people like Professor Zay, who we saw the skeleton of, and I was like, great reference, but no, I wanted them to still be alive or something like that. But obviously that explains that even if humans go into the spirit world with their body and mind, they still kind of age and stuff like that. So that's an interesting fact to learn. But still, that he's developed no kind of better relationships with humans. His goals are very much pro spirits and stuff like that. So I really feel like there's some development to come, and that Vatu being unleashed by Unalaq will maybe have Wan Shi Tong turn around. But either way, I think some stuff has to be learned from that for Wan Shi Tong. I did like the interaction between him and Janora, the whole, looking at the foxes, and it's just like, little men in boxes, really? And she just explained the whole electromagnetic thing about radios, and it was really nicely done, and it was a nice reference just to have Janora in that position, the same kind of exact spot almost where where Aang appeared before Wan Shi Tong, and the reference, it was really nicely done, I thought. But Janora for the rest of this episode basically takes on the role of being the hostage, and obviously Korra cares about Janora, doesn't want... She kind of has the responsibility of looking after her, and that she's the person who is needed to bring her into the spirit world, so that's nice. Yeah, so interesting from there that what we get of her is that Unalaq is going to use his I'm just going to call it light and dark bending, just for the sake of it, instead of saying waterbending technique every single time. He reveals that there's not just light bending, where you can turn dark spirits into light. You can actually do it the opposite way. You can turn light spirits into dark, or just basically taint stuff with darkness, which he was doing to Janora, and he said that it was destroy her soul, which is the first time that soul's ever been mentioned in Avatar, which was interesting in itself. And that's what that was going to happen when her body was completely encased in this kind of purple. She would have been destroyed effectively, and he was going to do the same to Korra at the end until the dragon bird saved her, which again just really shows that's what Unalaq is willing to do. That he's willing to basically destroy his niece. He's willing to destroy one of the last remaining airbenders left, just to go to basically do Vatu's bidding. And that in itself is a talking point, in that we still don't know the details of how Unalaq first met Wan Shi Tong, how he first met Vatu, how this whole thing came about, what he's doing it for. As much as we know a little bit more about his plan, there's still so much more about Unalaq's plan that we still need to know, which is fascinating, I think. And then this episode really did a good job of kind of showing you that this is a bad guy. We're kind of like worried, he is a villain definitely, but there's something more here. But this just really kind of highlighted it. Once you start doing that to like beloved characters, there's no going back from that. So yeah, that's interesting. And then with Korra, this was completely unexpected. Didn't expect this at all. Korra basically is, when she split up from Janora, she ends up in this dark section of the spirit world where there's lots of dark spirits around, really kind of freaky ones, crazy designs, and she gets frightened, and basically they do this nice kind of pan around shot, this kind of 360. We start off with Korra, we come back around, and we end up with like, I think it's 3 or 4 year old Korra. I think it's 4, is the exact age for that Korra. And it's interesting because it gives us more details on why, for instance, say Aang, every time he went to the spirit world, regardless of what he was wearing going in there, always kind of looked the same. In that he never had any problem with the spiritual side of things, so he always looked the same and never had any trouble. But Korra has huge issue with this, and so she gets really afraid of all these spirits. Like she almost feels helpless, and so that kind of comes across in the way she looks, the form that she takes in the spirit world as her 4-year-old self, crying, helpless, can't do anything, kind of sort of like she was back then, maybe. Sorry, my sister's cat is just there. Messing around. Distracting me. But, yeah, I'll try and continue this review. And then she meets Iroh out of nowhere. I was just like, yes, Wan Shi Tong and Iroh in the same episode? That's impressive. And yeah, Greg Baldwin again voicing him. That was fantastic. And he was just so well utilized in this episode, explaining that, I suppose the story is basically that when he knew his time was up, he went to the spirit world again, leaving his body behind, and just decided to stay there. And that's so fitting for him as a character that he would again advise the next Avatar, and it was kind of like just how he knew that this was the next Avatar, and that wisdom coming across, the use of stuff like the kind of teapot that uh, Wan used to carry Rava, and how Korra then drinks from it, and this all this stuff about little bits of light can really make you see a different side to the dark. Really exemplified with the kind of small dragon bird, in that in a dark moment she kind of just swatted this thing aside, not even thinking about what it is, just trying to protect herself through fear, and hurt it. And then through her journey to basically bring this thing back to where it came from and help it, she learned to not be afraid of the spirits as well, and learned that her light that she carries inside of her through Rava can change things around her, and then when she brings it back, she's kind of like healed it in a way, and so she's healed herself as well and got over that fear. It's this really great moment again. You get the 360 pan around shot, the four birds turn into the giant one that we see from the trailer, and Korra reverts to her kind of teenage self as we know her. And stuff like that, there's just lots of these symbolic moments, like obviously Jinora and Wan Chitong, Aang and Wan Chitong. Even the very end of this episode, in that Korra is kind of crying at the end, Aang is crying at the end of the library. This is 210 of Korra. 210 of Avatar was also to do with the library and stuff like this. All these parallels, all these kind of connections, it's just so well written, so well done. And then we get to the end, and just the drama just completely steps up, with obviously the kind of hostage situation thing, and Korra obviously has to do it. This is no situation where you can like accuse her of being stupid. This is her caring about Jinora and understanding the responsibility that she has, and you can't blame her for it. And she's forced to open the other spirit portal, and Vaatu. I think Jinora explains that more or less, if the two spirit portals are closed at the time of harmonic convergence, the battle won't be fought. But if they're both open, Vaatu will get enough power at harmonic convergence to break free and be able to fight. So there's the explanation that it wasn't that Unalaq was going to be the one to free Vaatu, but just through having the two spirit portals opened, that would help Vaatu free himself. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, that the reveal of the kind of dark bending technique, really interesting. And what else happens at the end? Obviously, the dragon bird that she's created this bond with saves her in the end from basically being destroyed. And they get the contrast between Unalaq, who brought his physical body with him, and his bending, compared to Korra, who's just there in spirit with her soul. And the way Unalaq's bending, what it did was kind of almost like pixelate her kind of body, kind of almost Tron-esque, and that her arm kind of like disappeared like here, but then immediately came back, and that it wasn't just destroying her. So it was interesting, but I suppose it made Korra learn that there is a way to have bending in the spirit world if you go through the portals. She's learned that now through Unalaq, and then obviously there is the very end, and just this sad, really just bad moment at the end when the Korra comes out of the spirit world, but Janora's still in there. She's still kind of meditating, kind of almost in a coma, and Korra doesn't say a word except, I'm sorry, and they know that she's trapped in the spirit world, and Korra's, crying. It's this amazing moment to leave the cliffhanger of the episode on. It's just, can't believe that they did this, and I just really hope that when we catch up with these again, that Tenzin's not like really mad at Korra, giving out to her, blaming her for all this. I hope he's a bit more understanding than that. It definitely gives Tenzin a reason to kind of come back into the story really kind of hard, in that he wants to save his daughter as much as anyone. And this could be what ultimately allows him to enter the spirit world, his desire to get his daughter back. And that's how he kind of, I suppose, fulfills his own destiny. I hope they do something like that, as opposed to him guilt tripping Korra or something like that. She's got enough on her plate. We saw her in the spirit world. She was trying to look after Janora. She was crying over Janora, wanted to get her back, and felt responsible for her the whole time. So she cared, but just that situation got so out of control. So I'm gonna end it there. Podcast will be tomorrow about this episode. Core Roundtable for A New Spiritual Age on Sunday. We're recording a regular episode of the podcast. It's actually going to be episode 70 with the other team today. So there will be two podcasts this week. So thanks for watching this video review, and bye.